So you're hearing a lot right now from social media that the Liberal Party, from the CBC pundits, from Mark Carney himself, that Pierre Poilievre is about to set your civil liberties on fire. That Canada is one step away from fascism because Poilievre wants to invoke something called the Notwithstanding clause. Sounds terrifying, right? Well, calm down. Let's talk about what it actually is. Because what they're not telling you, the part they hope you don't remember, is that the Notwithstanding clause wasn't invented by Pierre Poilievre. Wasn't invented by Stephen Harper. It wasn't dreamt up by some backroom Alberta oil lobbyists or far-right extremists. No, it was written into the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms back in 1982, and it was put there on purpose. And it was put there on purpose by the same people pretending it's the end of democracy now. The truth is, the Notwithstanding Clause, Section 33 of the Charter, was included during the constitutional negotiations of early 1980s when Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Junior's dad, was repatriating the Constitution from Britain. Trudeau wanted sweeping charter, something that gave courts the power to strike down any law they found unjust. But not everyone agreed. Saskatchewan Premier Alan Blackney was the key voice of the opposition. He and several other premiers, like Peter Lougheed of Alberta, argued that while rights are important, so is democracy. Imagine that. They believed that elected legislatures, not unelected judges, should have the final say in certain situations, especially when it comes to balancing the rights with public safety, national unity, or cultural protection. So a compromise was reached. The charter would include a clause, Section 33, that will allow federal or provincial governments to temporarily override certain charter rights. Not all rights, just a few, like the freedom of expression or legal protections under Section 2 and 7 to 15, and only for a 5-year term, after which you'd have to renew it. This wasn't some legal loophole. It was deliberate. It was negotiated. It was constitutional. And it was signed into law by Pierre Trudeau himself. So when his Liberal successors now act like invoking the Notwithstanding clause is a violation of Canada's democratic soul, remember this. It was the Liberals who signed off on it. It was the provinces who demanded it. And it was designed to keep judges from becoming unelected kings. That's what the clause is. It's not tyranny. It's not chaos. It is Canadian democracy functioning exactly as it was written. The only people pretending otherwise are the ones who never liked the idea of democratic accountability in the first place. So now you might be saying, hey, Dan, well, what's the problem? Well, there shouldn't be any. The Notwithstanding clause is a constitutional tool. It was deliberately crafted, intentionally placed in the Charter, and it's supported by the provinces, and it was signed into law by Pierre Trudeau himself. So you might be wondering, why is Pierre Poilievre invoking it now? What's changed? Why campaign on something that every Liberal pundit is now saying is the nuclear option? Here's why. Because the Supreme Court of Canada gutted the justice system's ability to hold mass murderers accountable. In 2022, R versus Bissonnette, the court ruled that sentencing a killer to consecutive parole ineligibility periods, that is, making someone who murders 6 people wait longer for parole versus someone who murders 1, is unconstitutional. They said it violates the killer's charter's rights. Yeah, Liberal judge did that. So now under the law, you can massacre a room full of people and still be eligible for parole in 25 years. Same as killing just one person. That's not hypothetical. That's Canadian law. Poilievre looked at that ruling and said what millions of Canadians are already thinking. That's insane. Justice isn't about rehabilitating the most deranged predators in society. It's about protecting victims, preserving public safety. So yes, Pierre Poilievre is campaigning on using the Notwithstanding clause. Why? Because he believes that mass murderers shouldn't get a parole hearing every 25 years like they just stole a car. Because families who lost loved ones shouldn't have to relive their trauma every 2 years while monsters like Paul Bernardo make parole applications. He's not trying to override your right to free speech. He's not coming for your right to protest. He's using a legal constitutional tool to restore basic sanity to a justice system that's lost all moral clarity. And yet the same people who froze your bank account because you supported the wrong political protest, the same people who rammed Bill C-11 down your throat so they could regulate your podcast, are now shrieking that this is authoritarianism. Please. This is not what the Notwithstanding clause was made for. It was put in the Charter to give elected governments the ability to stand to activist judges when they go too far. And they have gone too far. When the most brutal killers in our country are handed loopholes by the courts and treated like misunderstood poets, rather than human monsters, that's when it's time to say enough. Pierre Poilievre is saying it. He's standing up, not just for constitutional order, but for decency, for victims, and for the idea that law and justice should mean something in this country. That's why Pierre Poilievre is invoking the Notwithstanding clause. He's saying, no, we're not doing this anymore. We're not giving monsters a chance to walk free, not in this country. This isn't about political theater. It's not a stunt. This is about restoring balance to a system that has tipped dangerously in the favor of criminals over citizens, judges over parliament, and ideology over sanity. And just like this clause was designed to do, Pierre Poilievre is reasserting democratic authority that belongs to you, the voter, the people who elect governments to protect them, not to pass laws that are immediately torched by activist courts. This election, Pierre Poilievre is drawing a line in the sand. He's saying that justice should belong to the people again, not a clique of legal elites who think empathy for criminals is more important than accountability for their crimes. He's saying that Canada doesn't belong to murderers or the lawyers who defend them or to the judges who pretend they're victims too. It belongs to you. So when you hear the media hyperventilating about the Notwithstanding clause, when you hear Mark Carney and his Liberals insiders accusing Poilievre of destroying democracy, ask yourself, who's really been running the show for the last 10 years? Because this isn't about a clause. It's about who gets to make the rules in this country. Pierre Poilievre says it should be you. The Liberals are saying it should be them, and they're saying it forever. And that's the real issue on this ballot. But now, suddenly, when Pierre Poilievre wants to crack down on mass murderers, rapists, and repeat violent offenders, now Mark Carney and his Liberal elites are clutching at their pearls, shrieking about democracy and their charter rights. Let's be honest about what's happening here. The reason Liberals think Poilievre is dangerous isn't because they believe in civil liberties. It's because he's holding up a mirror to everything they've broken and showing Canadians he can fix it, legally, constitutionally, and immediately. That's what the Notwithstanding clause really threatens, not your rights, but their control. Because with one single constitutional tool, Section 33, Poilievre can walk in, undo years of Liberal damage, and put power back into where it belongs, in the hands of Parliament and in the hands of the people. He can override activist judges who let mass murderers out on parole. He can restore sentencing that actually reflects the value of human life. And he can protect your community from violent offenders who right now are walking the streets because Trudeau gutted the bail system. And most importantly, he can do it without needing permission from the Liberal-appointed judiciary. That's what scares them. That's why they're lashing out. Because this clause lets the Conservative government go around the bottleneck of bureaucrats, judges, and media gatekeepers and deliver justice directly. One foul stroke, and the legacy soft-on-crime, pro-criminal, anti-victim Liberal policy starts to unravel. That's not a threat to the Charter. That's the Charter working exactly as it was designed. The Notwithstanding clause wasn't written by accident. It was built as a check, a way to say, no, the people will get a say even when the courts forget who they serve. And now, for the first time in a generation, someone's willing to use it properly. And that's why they're panicking. Because Poilievre isn't playing the game by the Liberal insiders' rules. He's playing by Canada's rules. And for the first time in a long time, the people writing the laws might actually be the people you elect. That's a real threat to them. This is about power. It's about the ruling class built on an entire system, a swamp to serve itself, a system where judges are unelected, the censors are unelected, the bankers are unelected, and the criminals, they get more sympathy than the victims. Mark Carney doesn't oppose the Notwithstanding clause because he's worried about your freedoms. He's opposed to it because it's the one thing that can undo everything he and his elite Liberal buddies have spent the last decade building. This isn't about Pierre Poilievre threatening democracy. It's about you, the voter, taking it back. Because this election, for once, you don't have to accept decline is the inevitable. You don't have to accept that your kids can't walk safely down the streets. And you don't have to accept that the criminals run the cities while bureaucrats run your life. You don't have to accept Mark Carney's Canada. You can restore order. You can bring back justice. You can reassert the will of the people. And you can do it with your vote. You know exactly who to vote for. So this election, take your country back and make Canada first.